The conference room smelled like expensive cologne and bad decisions. That is what I remember most about the moment. Julian Thorne looked me dead in the eye and said, "Effective immediately. We are terminating your position as Vice President of Engineering." I am Gerald Vance, 56 years old, and I had just been fired in a room full of people who could not spell firmware if you spotted them the first 6 letters. Nobody moved. 14 executives sitting around a mahogany table, and you could hear the clock ticking on the wall. Julian did not blink, just sat there in his tailored suit, with his hands folded like he was closing a real estate deal, instead of ending someone's career. To him, I was not the guy who had spent 11 years building Aeroflight Defense Systems' entire autonomous drone navigation platform from the ground up. I was a line item he could cut to make his quarterly numbers look pretty for the board. I felt my jaw tighten. My hands wanted to grip the armrests, flip the table, and tell him exactly what I thought of his leadership, but I did not. I stood up, straightened my tie, looked at every single face in that room, and said one word: appreciated. They probably thought I had lost my mind, or maybe they thought I was broken. But none of them had any idea what that word actually meant. See, Julian Thorne was 38, a Wharton MBA. His uncle Charles Thorne sat on Aeroflight's board of directors and ran Apex Capital, the private equity firm that had led our Series B funding back in 2021. Julian had never designed a circuit board, never debugged a navigation algorithm, and never pulled an all-nighter trying to get a drone to hold stable in 40-knot crosswinds. But he sure loved words like operational efficiency and margin optimization. The guy talked about defense technology like he was selling timeshares. Me? I had been in aerospace and defense engineering for 27 years. I started at Raytheon in 1999 as a junior systems engineer, right when GPS-guided technology was changing everything. I spent 6 years there, learning how satellite communication systems actually work, testing them in desert heat at White Sands. Then I moved to Northrop Grumman during the early drone boom, developing some of the first autonomous flight control systems for military UAVs. I watched 3 companies around me fold during defense budget cuts in 2015. Half my colleagues got laid off on a Tuesday and were escorted out by Friday. That is when I learned the most important lesson of my career. If you build something valuable, make sure you own the keys. When I joined Aeroflight Defense Systems in 2015, they were a scrappy startup with 12 engineers and a dream of building autonomous drones for commercial infrastructure inspection. Power lines, oil pipelines, cell towers, places too dangerous or expensive to send humans. I built their entire navigation platform from scratch. The Flight Sentry system, proprietary algorithms that could fly a drone through a forest of power lines in zero visibility, mapping everything in real time with millimeter precision. By 2022, we had contracts with 17 utility companies across North America. By 2025, we were managing autonomous inspections for 60% of the major pipeline operators in the Gulf Coast region. But here is what Julian never understood and what most of those executives in that room never bothered to learn. 3 years ago, in 2023, when Aeroflight was hemorrhaging cash during a funding drought and the board was talking about selling off divisions, I had done something smart, real smart. I had restructured the core Flight Sentry patents into a separate entity, Vance Autonomous Technologies, which is my company. It was completely legal, fully documented, and approved unanimously by the same board that had just watched Julian hand me a termination letter. The licensing agreement was structured so Aeroflight could use the technology indefinitely as long as the original architect, that is me, maintained an active role in the company. If that relationship was severed without a proper 12-month transition protocol, all licensing reverted to my entity within 72 hours. My attorney had buried that clause in Section 9.4, 3 of the IP licensing framework. Every board member had signed it, including Julian's uncle Charles. But I am getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you how a 38-year-old MBA tried to erase me, and how I walked away with $750 million. The Flight Sentry system was not just software running on a laptop. We are talking about 11 years of navigation algorithms, LiDAR processing engines, collision avoidance systems, and machine learning models trained on over 2 million hours of autonomous flight data. The kind of technology that could fly a 40-pound drone through a narrow canyon at 60 miles per hour, dodging rock formations and wind shear in real time, while simultaneously generating 3D terrain maps accurate to within 3 millimeters. By the time Julian showed up, Flight History was generating 80% of Aeroflight's revenue. We had contracts worth over $400 million annually with clients ranging from major utility providers to pipeline operators and the Army Corps of Engineers. Julian had joined the board 14 months before my termination. His uncle's firm had led a recapitalization round, and suddenly Julian was appointed CO with a mandate to streamline operations and accelerate profitability. Translation: cut costs, boost margins, make the numbers look good for a potential IPO. He had never managed engineers before. His last job was running a logistics company that moved office furniture. But he spoke fluent MBA, return on invested capital, EBITDA margins, and headcount rationalization. The board ate it up because he was telling them what they wanted to hear. 6 months in, Julian started cutting my engineering budget. He canceled our advanced sensor research and development program, laid off 8 experienced drone engineers, and replaced them with contractors billing at half the rate. He told the board that engineering was overstaffed relative to revenue generation. I argued, got shut down, argued again, and got labeled resistant to organizational change. And now they had escorted me out, thinking the code on the servers was all they needed to keep the money printing press running. After that conference room execution, I sat in my truck in the parking lot for 20 minutes, engine off, windows down, the cool October air cooling my face. My phone started vibrating. Devin Brody, my lead navigations engineer, texted first. "Boss, what the hell? Security just locked your office. Are they serious?" Devin was 31, a Caltech PhD in robotics, and the best autonomous systems engineer I had ever worked with. I had recruited him straight out of his doctoral program and spent 4 years teaching him how to make algorithms work in the real world, where wind does not follow equations and GPS signals bounce off canyon walls. Then came Valerie Jenkins from operations. "Gerald, this is madness. Half the team is in shock. Nobody knows what is happening with the Chevron deployment next week." Valerie had been our director of operations for 6 years. She was former Air Force, having done 2 tours managing drone operations in Afghanistan. She understood how critical our technology was to the companies depending on it. My older brother Howard called from his ranch in Wyoming. "Jimmy, what happened?" "I just got a call from Eleanor." Howard was 59, a retired Army colonel, now running a small defense consulting firm. He had spent 30 years in military intelligence. "This does not pass the smell test, brother. Something is off. The thing that ate at me was not losing my job. It was the texts from my team. These were brilliant engineers who had trusted me, followed my lead, and built something extraordinary together. And now they were scared." Devin was not just an employee to me. He was the future of autonomous navigation, carrying forward everything I had learned over 3 decades. Watching him panic felt like watching my own son get blindsided by something he did not deserve. I drove home to my wife Eleanor. We had been married 26 years, having met when I was doing contract work for Lockheed Martin and she was finishing her law degree at Georgetown. She had watched me navigate 4 career transitions, seen me lose positions, and rebuild from scratch each time. She handed me a bourbon and said what she always says: "They just handed you the best opportunity you have had in years, Gerald. They are just too stupid to know it yet." She was right. But even she did not know how right until 3 days later. Julian had scheduled a critical demonstration for Thursday, 3 days after my termination. The Department of Energy had a $200 million contract on the table for autonomous pipeline inspection across the entire Gulf Coast region. It was the biggest deal in Aeroflight's history. Representatives from the DOE, Chevron, ExxonMobil, and 3 different defense contractors were flying in to watch Flight Sentry perform a live autonomous inspection of a simulated pipeline corridor at our testing facility in Galveston. I was not there, but Devin texted me real-time updates from the control room. At 9:08 a.m., the demo was starting. Julian was wearing his power suit. The DOE people looked serious. Chevron brought their whole executive team. At 9:23 a.m., the first drone launched following a pre-programmed route, looking good so far. Then at 9:31 a.m., the navigation system just froze mid-flight. The drone went into emergency hover mode. Everyone was staring at the screens. At 9:38 a.m., the second drone would not even initialize. The control interface was showing license authorization required, prompting them to contact Vance Autonomous Technologies. Julian just went pale. By 9:45 a.m., the DOE representative was asking if Aeroflight actually owned the technology they were demonstrating. Julian was stammering. It was brutal. I sat in my home office reading these texts, my bourbon getting warm. The system was doing exactly what I had designed it to do, protecting itself. When I had restructured those patents 3 years earlier, I had built in multiple fail-safes. Under the terms of the intellectual property agreement, the core licensing framework required periodic cryptographic authorization from the patent holder, which is Vance Autonomous Technologies. If the lead architect's employment was terminated without executing the transition protocol outlined in Section 9.43, all licensing tokens would expire within 72 hours, and the system would enter protected mode. There was no override and no workaround. The encryption was military grade because that was the standard I had built everything to. At 10:15 a.m., it was a complete disaster. All 4 demo drones were grounded. The Chevron team was already leaving. The DOE representative said something about due diligence concerns and walked out. By 10:42 a.m., Julian had locked himself in his office. The legal team was in an emergency session. Someone from ExxonMobil had just asked our sales rep if we had been misrepresenting our technology capabilities. But the demo failure was just the opening act. What Julian had not considered was that Flight Sentry was not sitting idle on servers. At that exact moment, it was actively managing autonomous drone operations for 23 companies across the country. Duke Energy's high-voltage transmission line inspections in the Carolinas, pipeline monitoring across Alberta, the Army Corps of Engineers levee inspection program along the Mississippi, and 3 offshore oil platform inspection contracts in the Gulf of Mexico. When the licensing expired, those systems did not crash. They grounded every drone and locked every operator console. Suddenly, field crews who had been relying on autonomous inspections were staring at blank screens. Devon's next text came at noon. Duke Energy just called. Their entire fall inspection schedule is frozen. They have got crews sitting in trucks across 3 states with no operational drones. They are threatening breach of contract. By 2:80 p.m., it was a full-blown crisis. Aeroflight's support lines were overwhelmed. Client managers had escalated the issue to their CEOs. The Army Corps of Engineers was talking about national infrastructure security concerns. Julian had brought in 2 outside law firms, and they were all telling him the same thing. The intellectual property agreements were airtight. Valerie Jenkins called me that afternoon. Her voice was tight, controlled. "Gerald, this is chaos," she said. "Julian is blaming the engineering team for system failures. He just put Devon and 2 other engineers on administrative leave pending investigation. He is telling clients it is a cybersecurity incident." A cybersecurity incident. That made my blood boil. He was covering his incompetence by accusing my people of sabotage. "How is Devon handling it?" I asked. "He is devastated," Valerie replied. "He keeps telling everyone he cannot fix anything without authorization codes that only exist in your licensing infrastructure. Julian won't listen. He keeps insisting Aeroflight owns everything, and you are somehow illegally blocking their systems." "Valerie, I need a favor," I said. "Get me a complete list of all active client deployments. Every company, every drone fleet, every active contract. I need to know exactly who is being affected and how badly." She hesitated. "Gerald, I cannot just share internal documents." "You are not sharing it with a competitor," I told her. "You are giving it to the patent holder who is trying to figure out how to minimize damage to innocent people." Duke Energy line workers did not do anything wrong. Pipeline crews do not deserve to sit idle because Julian Thorne does not understand technology licensing. There was silence on the line. "Then, I will have it to you within 2 hours." The list hit harder than I expected. 23 companies. Combined, they were running over 600 autonomous drones through Flight Sentry's navigation system. Some of those operations were safety-critical, high-voltage line inspections where a single missed defect could cause a wildfire. or pipeline monitoring where a leak detection delay could mean an environmental disaster. This was not just about money anymore. People could actually get hurt. That evening, my doorbell rang. Eleanor answered and came back looking surprised. "Gerald, there is a young man at the door. Says he is Devin from your old company." Devin Brody stood on my porch looking like he had been through a war. A wrinkled polo shirt, a coffee stain on his jeans, and dark circles under his eyes like he had not slept in days. "Boss, we need to talk," he said. I brought him into my study and poured him a bourbon. The kid needed it. "It is falling apart," he said. "Major clients are pulling their contracts. Duke Energy's lawyers sent a formal breach notice, and Julian," he rubbed his eyes. "Julian sent a company-wide email calling the system failure a technical anomaly and saying external consultants are being engaged to resolve it." External consultants. He is talking about you like you are some IT help desk instead of the person who built every line of code in that platform. "Devin, I designed those fail-safes for a reason," I said. "Julian thought he could fire the pilot and keep the plane flying, but it is not just Julian getting hurt. Our entire team is being scapegoated." He accused Timothy Miller of leaving back doors in the navigation code, Devin said. "Timothy has been with us for 7 years. His wife just had a baby last month. He is terrified he is going to get fired and lose his health insurance." That hit me in the chest. Timothy was one of my first hires at Aeroflight. He was a quiet guy with incredible attention to detail. The kind of engineer who catches the bug that would have crashed a drone into a power line. His kid was 3 weeks old. "What is Julian saying about restoring access?" I asked. "He is convinced Aeroflight owns everything, and you are breaking the law." 3 different law firms have explained why he is wrong under federal patent law, specifically 35 U.S.C. Section 271, but he won't hear it. He keeps saying, "We paid for this technology." Like that changes the legal structure. I did not sleep much that night. I kept thinking about Timothy Miller and his newborn, about Devin, who had trusted me with his career, about the Duke Energy line workers sitting in trucks with no drones to fly. I had built those fail-safes to protect myself, but collateral damage was not part of my plan. The next morning, my phone rang at 7 a.m. It was Human Resources. "Sandra Mitchell, Gerald, how are you? Listen, there has been some internal discussion about your situation. We think we may have moved a bit hastily on the leadership transition." "Sandra, skip the script," I said. "You are calling because your clients are threatening lawsuits, your drones are grounded across the country, and you realize you are committing patent infringement under 35 U.S.C. Section 271, there was a pause. "Well, yes, there have been some operational complications, but we would love to explore a consulting arrangement. Perhaps a 60-day engagement to help stabilize systems while we bring new technical leadership on board." "How much?" I asked. "We are thinking $300,000 plus accelerated vesting on your remaining stock options." I actually smiled. $300,000 to fix a crisis that was costing clients millions per day. "Not interested," I said. "Okay, what about $500,000? We understand the urgency." "Sandra, you are not understanding the situation," I replied. "Julian Thorne fired me publicly in front of people I had worked alongside for 11 years. He treated me like a broken copier he was sending back to the leasing company. And now you want me to fix his disaster for consulting fees?" The silence stretched. "What would it take?" she finally asked. "It would take Julian Thorne publicly acknowledging that he made a mistake. It would take the board guaranteeing that every engineer on my team is protected from retaliation. It would take a formal apology to Devin Brody, Timothy Miller, and every other engineer Julian accused of sabotage. And honestly, even then, I am not sure I would be interested. Gerald, please be reasonable. Companies are losing millions. Then maybe Julian should have been reasonable before he decided to play power games with technology he has never bothered to understand," I said, and hung up. 4 days after that call, I got an email that changed the trajectory of everything. It was not from Aeroflight. It was from someone I had not spoken to in 6 years. "Beatrice Albright at Vanguard Systems. Gerald, I heard through the grapevine what happened. If you are free for lunch, I think we should have a conversation." Beatrice had worked with me at Aeroflight from 2016 to 2020, back when we were still building the foundational navigation algorithms. She was a brilliant aerospace engineer with a Stanford PhD and an MBA from MIT Sloan. She understood both the technology and the business better than anyone I had ever met. Julian had pushed her out during one of his early reorganizations, claiming her department was redundant. The real reason? She had told the board in front of Julian that his cost-cutting strategy would destroy the company's technological advantage. She was right, and he did not forgive her for it. Vanguard Systems was Aeroflight's primary competitor in the autonomous drone inspection market. They had been trying to build something comparable to Flight Sentry for 5 years with moderate success. Their systems worked fine in open terrain, but they could not match our precision in complex environments, dense infrastructure, offshore platforms, and confined spaces. The gap was the predictive navigation engine, and they knew it. We met at a seafood restaurant in downtown Houston on Wednesday, exactly 10 days after Julian had fired me. Beatrice looked sharp, showing a confident posture and direct eye contact. She had the energy of someone who is thriving because the right people finally recognized her value. Julian Thorne is the dumbest smart person I have ever met, she said before I had even opened my menu. But you built something at Aeroflight that is genuinely world-class. Built, I noted. Past tense. She smiled and slid a tablet across the table. Gerald, I will be direct. We have been monitoring the situation. The system failures, the client defections, and the investor panic. Aeroflight's stock is down 38%. Major clients have terminated their contracts. Duke Energy is litigating, and the DOE contract is dead. On the screen was a detailed analysis of Aeroflight's financial implosion. Client revenue projections cratering, employee attrition accelerating as engineers jumped ship, and 3 pending lawsuits from clients claiming breach of service agreements. Impressive intelligence work, I said. We do our homework, Beatrice replied, but here is what really matters. We know you hold the Flight Sentry patents through Vance Autonomous Technologies. We know the licensing structure, and we know that technology is worth significantly more than what Aeroflight's balance sheet ever reflected. I took a sip of water. That is Aeroflight's problem. Gerald, Vanguard wants to acquire your complete patent portfolio, not license it, she said. A full acquisition. We are talking about combining your navigation technology with our hardware platform and sensor arrays to build something neither company could create alone. She pulled up another screen, showing side-by-side technical comparisons of Vanguard's drone systems and Flight Sentry's software capabilities. They had clearly done deep analysis. What kind of number are we discussing? I asked. $750 million for the full patent portfolio, plus a 5-year position as our Chief Technology Officer at $2.8 million annually, she said. You would have full authority over technical direction, the R&D budget, and hiring. You would be building the next generation of autonomous systems with the resources and respect you deserve. $0.75 million. For patents that Julian Thorne thought were just software on a server, for work he had called legacy systems in a board meeting last year. This is a real offer? I asked. Board approved last Tuesday, Beatrice confirmed. We have been planning this approach since the day you were terminated. The system failures just accelerated our timeline by about 6 months. She leaned forward. Gerald, think about what you had at Aeroflight. 11 years fighting for budget, justifying your innovations to people who thought autonomous navigation was just a fancy GPS. At Vanguard, you would be working with engineers who understand the physics, executives who respect the science, and a board that knows the difference between cost-cutting and value destruction. What is the timeline? I asked. Due diligence will take 2 weeks, Beatrice said. Patent transfer and integration planning, another 2 weeks. You could be our CTO by Thanksgiving with a team of your choosing, and a lab that would make your old Aeroflight facility look like a garage. I thought about Devin, Timothy Miller, and his newborn daughter, Valerie Jenkins, and the rest of the team stuck in Julian's chaos. What about bringing my people over? I asked. Already anticipated, Beatrice smiled. Devin Brody is at the top of our wish list. Valerie Jenkins, we would love to have her running field operations. Timothy Miller, absolutely. Anyone else you recommend? We are prepared to make competitive offers with signing bonuses to offset any non-compete concerns. This was not about revenge anymore. This was about building something better with people who deserved to work somewhere their talent was valued. I need a few days, I said. Of course, Beatrice replied. But Gerald, don't wait too long. Aeroflight is bleeding out and other companies are going to start circling the patents. We want to be first and best, but we won't be the only ones calling. That night, Eleanor and I sat on the back porch with bourbon. She had been watching me carry the weight of the past 2 weeks. The anger, the guilt about my team, and the sleepless nights. What does your gut say? She asked. That Julian Thorne tried to throw away the most valuable thing his company ever built, I said. And now, someone smarter gets to benefit from his arrogance. And the money? We had been comfortable on my Aeroflight salary, but $750 million was a different universe. That was generational wealth. That was never worrying about healthcare, helping our kids buy homes, funding scholarships, and living the rest of our lives on our terms. The money matters, but it is really about the work, I told her. Vanguard has the resources and the leadership to do this right. I would be building instead of defending for the first time in years. Then you already know the answer, she said. I called my attorney the next morning. Walter Higgins had been my lawyer since my Northrop Grumman days. He had structured the patent agreements that were now the most important documents in my professional life. Walter, I need you to review an acquisition offer, I said. $750 million for the full Vance Autonomous Technologies portfolio. I heard a long whistle. That is a major transaction, Gerald. Who is the buyer? Vanguard Systems, I said. Full acquisition plus the CTO position. We spent 4 hours dissecting every clause. Walter's team had built the original structure of Vance Autonomous Technologies, specifically to accommodate a scenario like this. Everything is clean, Walter said finally. The patents are unencumbered, clearly held by your entity, and Aeroflight's licensing expired exactly as designed when your employment was terminated. Under 35 U.S.C. Section 271, they have zero legal standing to block this sale. If they try to use the technology now, it is a clear-cut case of willful patent infringement. And the CTO agreement? I asked. Strong terms, Walter said. You would have meaningful authority over technology direction and team building. Much better than being a vice president, subject to the whims of someone who thinks drone navigation is just a PowerPoint topic. I called Beatrice that afternoon. Let's do it, I said. Welcome home, Gerald, she replied. On Friday evening, 12 days after my termination, my doorbell rang. Julian Thorne stood on my porch in khakis and a wrinkled Oxford shirt, looking like he had aged 10 years in 2 weeks. Gerald, can we talk? He asked, his voice hoarse. I let him in. Eleanor brought us coffee and disappeared upstairs. You cannot do this, Julian said. You cannot sell our technology to our competitor. It is not your technology, Julian, I said. It never was. That is the whole point. You developed it at Aeroflight, he argued. With our funding, our facilities, I pulled out the folder I had been keeping on my desk. It contained copies of every legal document Walter Higgins had structured 3 years earlier. Patent assignments, board resolutions, and licensing agreements, all signed by Aeroflight's executives, including his uncle, Charles Thorne Ride. Section 9.4.3, I said. Your own board approved this arrangement during the budget restructuring in 2023. They just never explained it to you because nobody imagined you would be foolish enough to terminate the patent holder without following the transition protocol. By firing me, you triggered the immediate expiration of the license. Julian's face went gray as he flipped through the pages. I watched the realization hit him. This will destroy the company, he whispered. 300 people, Gerald, people with families. That landed harder than I wanted it to. I thought about Timothy Miller, his daughter, the engineers, and the field crews. But I also knew Julian was trying to use their livelihoods as a shield. Julian, you want to help those people? Here is what you are going to do, I said. You are going to offer anyone who wants to leave a full severance package, 18 months of salary, continued benefits, and job placement assistance. If you do not, you will face a massive shareholder derivative suit for breach of fiduciary duty. You wasted the company's primary asset through gross negligence. He stared at me, his hands shaking slightly. And as for the engineers who want to stay in autonomous systems, I continued, Vanguard is hiring. I am building a new team there. "You are gutting my company and calling it a rescue," he said. "No," I told him. "You gutted your company the day you decided an MBA spreadsheet was more valuable than 27 years of engineering expertise." "I am just picking up the pieces." He stared at the papers for a long moment, then stood up and walked toward the door without another word. I watched his sedan pull out of the driveway. The signing was the following Tuesday, exactly 14 days after the morning Julian had fired me. Vanguard Systems headquarters was glass and steel, but with actual engineers, visible, physical drone prototypes in the lobby, and real innovation happening on every floor. Beatrice Albright met me in the executive conference room. The contract came down to two simple facts. Vance Autonomous Technologies was selling its complete patent portfolio to Vanguard Systems for $750 million, and I was signing on as Chief Technology Officer with a 5-year commitment, full authority over technical direction, and a compensation package worth $2.8 million annually. I signed my name 11 times. Each signature felt like closing a door I had been trying to walk through for years. "Welcome aboard, Gerald," Beatrice said. "First order of business, call Devin Brody. Tell him he starts Monday." The news broke 3 hours later. Aeroflight Defense Systems loses core drone technology in $750 million Vanguard deal. Aeroflight's stock dropped 47% before trading was halted. By market close, they had lost $1.2 billion in valuation. Without Flight Sentry, Aeroflight was just another defense contractor with no software advantage. Investors realized they had been valuing a company based on technology the COO had never actually controlled. Julian Thorne resigned the following morning. The board released a statement about strategic repositioning, but industry insiders knew the truth. The man who had fired me for being an obstacle had just proven exactly how foundational the right expertise really is. Devin called me that night, and for the first time in 2 weeks, he sounded like himself again. "Boss, is it real? Did you actually pull this off?" "It is real," I said. "I am your CTO now." He laughed, the first time I had heard him laugh since before the termination. 3 weeks later, Devin and 9 other engineers from my old team started at Vanguard. Valerie Jenkins came on as Vice President of Field Operations. Timothy Miller accepted a senior engineering role with a 20% raise and premium health insurance that covered his daughter from day one. Even my brother Howard ended up consulting for us on defense integration projects, bringing his 30 years of military intelligence experience to our autonomous systems security architecture. The transition was smoother than anyone predicted. Our new Flight Sentry 2 platform launched 4 months ahead of schedule. First quarter revenue hit $120 million, mostly from clients who had been burned by Aeroflight's instability and were desperate for a reliable partner. The Department of Energy contract that Julian had botched, Vanguard won it, $230 million over 5 years. It was the largest autonomous drone services contract in federal history. Aeroflight Defense Systems filed for bankruptcy 14 months after I left. They sold their remaining assets to pay creditors. The 300 employees Julian had worried about? Most of them found better positions. The good engineers landed at Vanguard, at competitors, or at startups building on the autonomous revolution we had helped create. It turns out talented people do not stay unemployed long when an entire industry is growing. Julian Thorne, last I heard, was doing management consulting in Phoenix, probably advising other companies on operational efficiencies while carefully leaving out the part where he destroyed a billion-dollar company, because he could not tell the difference between cutting costs and cutting capabilities. People ask me if I feel guilty about how it played out. Honestly, no. Julian thought he could replace 27 years of hands-on engineering with budget spreadsheets and MBA jargon. He thought publicly firing me would signal bold, decisive leadership to his board. Instead, it revealed what everyone on my team already knew. He was managing something he had never taken the time to understand. The word I said in that conference room, appreciated, was not sarcasm. It was not bitterness. It was genuine. Because in that moment, watching Julian's smug face as he read my termination notice like a weather report, I realized he was giving me exactly what I needed. Freedom from fighting people who did not value what I had built. Freedom to take my work somewhere it would be respected. and freedom to build the team and the technology I had always envisioned. When young engineers ask me for career advice, I tell them three things. First, your expertise is not just what you know, it is how you protect what you create. Second, always read the contracts, especially the ones other people skip. And third, never let someone who does not understand your work decide what it is worth, because the day will come when they try to replace you with something cheaper. And if you have been smart, if you have planned ahead, that is the day you discover your real value was always more than they were paying for. In the defense industry, we talk about redundancy a lot: backup systems, fail-safe protocols, and contingency plans. Julian Thorne thought I was the redundancy. It turns out I was the primary system, and he just disconnected it. That lesson cost him his job, his company, and $750 million. But me, I am 57 now, standing in a lab at Vanguard, watching Devin Brody, who is now our Vice President of Navigation Systems, test the latest generation of Flight Sentry. Eleanor and I bought some land in the hill country outside Austin, where I can sit on the porch and think between board meetings. We are set for life, but the money was never really the point. The point is this: I wake up every morning knowing my work matters, knowing my team is valued, and knowing that the people who believed in me are building something extraordinary. Appreciated. I meant every letter.